The gunman who opened fire on an outlet mall in Dallas on Saturday, killing at least 8 people, had an apparent fascination with white supremacist or neo Nazi beliefs that are now being examined by investigators as a possible motive for the attack. Texas Governor Greg Abbott told Fox News Sunday that his priority in response to mass killings is to address mental health crises rather than to tighten gun regulations, even though research shows that stricter gun laws could lessen the severity of mass killings and may decrease overall gun violence. Jurors will begin deliberating in the civil lawsuit brought by Arthur E. Jean Carroll against former President Donald Trump, who she says raped her in the mid 1990s. Closing statements were given today in the U.S. District Court in Manhattan. Carroll put on a litany of witnesses to support her claim that she was raped in a dressing room in a high-end department store in New York. Donald Trump did not make an appearance at the trial and did not put on any witnesses. Carroll told jurors that she has come to realize she has permanent scars. California's Reparations Task Force voted Saturday to approve recommendations on how the state may compensate and apologize to Black residents for generations of harm caused by discriminatory policies. The 9-member committee, which first convened nearly 2 years ago, gave final approval at a meeting in Oakland to a hefty list of proposals that now go to state lawmakers to consider for reparations legislation. Some estimates from economists have projected that the state could owe upwards of $800 billion to Black residents of California. President Biden is set to welcome Speaker Kevin McCarthy and other top congressional leaders to the White House on Tuesday for a pivotal round of discussions about the nation's taxes, spending, and debt as a potentially catastrophic government default rapidly approaches. The meeting is not expected to produce anything close to a final agreement on a fiscal plan that could include raising the debt limit, but even small points of consensus could be hard to come by. Biden wants to expand federal spending and reduce future debt by raising taxes on high-income earners and large companies. And to the contrary to Biden's plan, the Republicans have already passed a bill to cut federal discretionary spending on things such as national parks, education, and more. They also want to cancel tax breaks for certain low-emission energy sources that were a part of Mr. Biden's signature climate laws. And Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, has decided to seek a new name for its central library called now the Berkeley, after concluding that the alumnus it honors, the 18th century philosopher George Berkeley, owned slaves in colonial Rhode Island and wrote pamphlets supportive of slavery. University of California, Berkeley was also named for the philosopher. Trustees at that university says they have no plans on changing the name of the college. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. It's hour 2. And in this hour, I'm going one-on-one with Kirk Moore. He is a writer. He's a member of the Writers Guild of America. And as you know, screenwriters continue their strike against Hollywood companies. The two sides remain what some say are a galaxy apart, pretending for a potentially long and destructive standout. The Writers Guild, which represents 11,500 screenwriters, went on strike last week after contract negotiations with studios, streaming services, and networks failed. By the end of last week, companies punched back at the union in the news media, and striking writers celebrated the disruption of shows filming from finished scripts. We're going to talk to Kirk Moore. He's the writer of American Crime, 13 Reasons, and For Life. We're going to talk about the impact that this strike has not only on writers, not only on the entertainment business and those who work in that business, but on the economy, because everything that happens in entertainment, particularly in big cities like Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, there's some ripple effect. It's not just the writers who won't be getting a paycheck, but think about all of those other ancillary services that support your favorite television shows, I'm talking about the people that cook the meals, the caterers, the drivers, the car services that are used to transport people back and forth from the airport to the studio, the costumers. A good friend of mine works in costuming, the makeup and hair artists that do all the hair and makeup for the folks you see in television shows. So there are thousands and thousands of people that work on television shows and movies who are going to be impacted by this strike. And we know the last time there was a strike, it lasted for about 100 days. A lot of people were wiped out. They were financially devastated. We know strikes are always difficult. We just went through a big strike with LA Unified School District here in Los Angeles. So when we come forward, Kirk Moore is going to help us understand what the writers want and what the chances of reaching a compromise are, particularly a compromise that may happen in a shorter period of time than the last strike that lasted 100 days. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
Tell me you're the boy that girl. You are young, gifted, and black.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
And that's a fact.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA.
All right, we are back. We're talking about the Writers Guild of America, the strike. It entered its second week on Monday, and no sign of any progress being made in labor talks as the entertainment industry braces for what could be a protracted work stoppage, surpassing the one that occurred even 15 years ago. We know that hundreds of picketers have walked strike lines throughout the last 5 days or so at major studios, and that negotiations between the union and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which represents the studios, those conversations have yet to yield a deal. I want to talk about what the strike means, not just for those who write for television shows and movies, but what it means for all of those people that also work in production to bring you your favorite shows, and what you can expect in terms of television watching and viewing for the next couple of weeks and definitely the next couple of months. Kirk Moore is joining me in this hour. He is a writer. He's a member of the Writers Guild of America. He's has credits on American Crime, 13 Reasons, and For Life. Thank you, Kirk, so much for being with us today. I think you're on mute.
How you doing? Thank you for having me. I was all muted already.
That's okay. Fantastic. Thank you for joining. Just give me your, unfiltered thoughts about how you are feeling in this moment about this strike.
I mean, it's a sort of an odd thing. I mean, a week ago, I was on a show and working and preparing to go to Vancouver where we are in production. And then, last Monday, the agreement was not reached, and then it was pencils down. So everything had to stop. I do want to sort of address something that I heard you just speak on it in regards to the crew and everybody involved in the production. So the way it works right now is that, a lot of the productions that are happening are still going on. Although we are on strike, there are shows that are already in production, meaning that the scripts have already been written. Even though that's a little hairy because in TV production, you kind of are rewriting. When you're in production, you're rewriting every day. So and
we should make a point. That's a good point, because under the guidelines, even a script that's been written while you are on strike, that script cannot be altered, cannot be edited according to the guidelines. So those shows that are in production, they have to follow that script to the T if they are staying in compliance, correct?
Yes, because there are no writers on set. So typically the way, TV works is, they're kind of a bit of a hierarchy, but the producers are also the writers. And so once you become a producer, typically you go to set, whether that's in LA or, somewhere else, and then you have to watch over set. Most writers typically cover their own episodes, but even that is changing, which is also part of the reason why we're striking, because a lot of the writers now, the showrunners or the creators, are sort of the only people that are going to set. And so after being in a room for 10 to 20 weeks, then the writers go away, and then the showrunner is now having to shoulder all of that responsibility, where it used to be that you would have the writer who would write that particular episode would then go to set and actually, see that episode through. And now a lot of that is changing and or dwindling.
But let's go back to your original point, because you want to make the point that there are shows in production right now where the scripts have been finished, and those shows will continue to film. So those workers, the craft workers, the drivers, the hair, makeup, the wardrobers, they're still working on those shows, right?
They're still working. Yeah. Now, the thing is that we've been striking at a lot of these places, and a lot of these places where there are producing and where they are in production. And so a lot of times, whether it's the Teamsters or they won't cross the line. So then they'll just turn their trucks around, and then the production will have to stop.
Okay. So even though technically they could show up, they're standing in solidarity with the Writers Guild, saying, no, we're not going to bring our production trucks or bring our equipment here because we're members of unions as well. But Let me ask you, so if I am in production, say on Stranger Things, I just read that show is going to have to delay the next season. But if we're already in production and the script has been written, and as you said, that team can continue to work. But what happens when they run out of, scripts? So maybe you got 2 or 3 that are in the can, but now you've already produced those 2 or 3. Now what happens?
Then now you wait, because now nothing is being written. So, I think one of the studio heads spoke recently about like how they have enough content to last them about a year. That's because it's sort of like, it's a weird thing. Like, because we were anticipating that there was potentially a strike, and the studios knew it, and then so did the writers. So we were like, the writers were technically working, trying to get stuff done so we can get paid, so that we have money just in case we have to strike, which means that we're giving the studios additional content that would make it more difficult for us. So it's like a weird.
So you kind of help the studios prepare for the strike, that now that gets used against you, because they're saying, look, we can wait y'all out. We got a year worth of your content that you wrote. You did get paid for, but you're not getting paid now. Do you believe that studio head when he says they have a year? That's a lot of content.
I mean, honestly, like, I really don't know. I mean, everybody is kind of on a different sort of cycle in terms of what they've been doing and what they've been buying. So, I mean, it's easier to sort of look at broadcasts like NBC, ABC, because they typically have a very strict schedule. You know, there's fall, and then so their shows come out, you know, August and September. So a lot of those shows that are going to come out in August and September, they were already shooting. They've been shooting. The show that I was on, we've been shooting for the last 4 months. So there are episodes that have already been done. So even those networks, they will probably have, at least for new shows, they'll probably have at least a half a season worth of stuff there, you know.
So they, in theory, could get from August, September through November, December. They could get to almost half to the end of the year.
That's a horrible way to, you know, but yes, potentially that is, I hope that I think that one thing that'll really sort of help us out is that, like with the Teamsters, SAG, the DGA, like when these other guilds start, because the DGA has to now vote on their contract in a few weeks, and then in June or July, I can't remember, SAG has to vote on their contract. So if SAG says, well, we're going to strike, so now there are no actors and there are no writers, so there's nothing.
Then there's a real problem.
Yeah, you know.
Okay, so but what percentage? You raise a good point about those shows that are in production, have been in production, maybe can start a new season in August or September and maybe get through half a season. What percentage would you say of shows that represent? Is that like half of the shows that people watch, or 25%?
I honestly don't know. I would say probably in network, it's probably about half, if not maybe a little more, because they just run on a very specific sort of cycle. They got to get their fall shows out. They have their winter program, and so a lot of their stuff is done a year ahead for the most part, because they have to plan for that. And so, you know, our show was originally supposed to be a mid-season show, the show that I was working on, but then they held it so that it can come out in the fall, so that now they have stuff for the fall.
What about the night shows? We know the late night shows, the Jimmy Kimmels, the Stephen Colbert's, those shows shut down like immediately, like on May 2nd.
I mean, they are ran completely off of writers. And a lot of times the hosts are also writers and are also in the guild. You know, it's very similar with Quinta Brunson and on Abbott Elementary. She's the creator of the show, but she's also, and she's an actress on the show, but she's also a writer. And so because she's a writer, now she was out there striking with everybody else last week. So she cannot be involved with anything that's happening with Abbott because she's a writer.
Wow. Okay. So was Abbott done for its season?
I'm not sure how far they're in, but I would say, like, I'm sure they have, if it's a network show, I'm sure they have, you know, some episodes in there. Yeah.
So tell us the difference. So we talked about network shows and how their schedule would allow them to get, you know, we won't say a year, because that sounds way too generous, but they got stuff. What about the streaming sites? They're different. They're run on different schedules. What's happening with them?
Honestly, like, I mean, the part of the thing and part of the reason why we're striking is because we don't know. You know, we don't get the information. We're not given the data. You know, we don't really know what these streamers are doing. We don't know what the numbers really are. We don't know how we actually get paid. So, you know, you just have to sort of think that, you know, when our guild, they release the proposals and the offers that we sent to them and the offers that we got back. And if you look at those offers, it was very clear that they were not coming, like they weren't, to me, coming to the table, honestly. Like they weren't budging. It was a lot of, we reviewed this and we're not going to counter. There was a lot of that, and just even like we were talking about with ABC, CBS, like when those shows come on, the next day you can see their ratings. 11 million people watch this show or whatever, but we don't get that kind of information, or particularly really get that information from streaming, and especially where it lines up to how much we're paid in residuals. No one really understands how that works, and they don't really want to release the data to give us that. So it sort of drives back to this original thing, is like, I don't know how much they have. I mean, for streamers, they have to have content all year. So, who knows how many projects that they have. But I would say that if they were in the writer's room on any of these projects, then they're done for it, because there's no way that they can be produced. And if they do have, I think like we just saw, I think I read like House of Dragon said that like all the scripts were in, and so they were basically just in sort of like post-production, or they were just shooting. But like I said, that's a tricky thing, because as somebody who has been doing this for 8 years, when you produce an episode of TV, like the production draft goes in, you go to set, and then there's going to be like, by the time you're done shooting, there's like 6 or 7 additional drafts that we are changing dialogue to accommodate locations, to accommodate the actors, to accommodate if there's night shoot, so things are constantly changing. And
so you're saying it's almost impossible, though, to take those scripts that were done earlier and say, this is going to be the final product and we're going to produce off of those scripts, because what happens if you're on the set and you need to change the dialogue? What do they do in those situations?
Either they're going to improvise, or they're going to either improvise, or they're just not going to do it. And so, that then affects the quality of what we, of the work that we put out there, because clearly we want to work and we want to put our best work out there. But it's like, if this is the only recourse that we have, then this is the only recourse that we have, Yeah.
So just to be clear, Kirk, we're not talking like news shows. So people were asking, well, what about, Good Morning America or CBS Morning? Those shows, are they impacted by the writer's strike?
For the most part, certain shows, like I know like most of the night shows, they have writers. And I think like a couple of the morning shows, I'm not sure which ones, but like, like there's Tamron Hall, Kelly Clarkson, all those, like some of those shows do have writers. So now, some of those shows are still going because they take weeks ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So, but if they have writers, then you will start to see in the weeks to come that those shows will stop. Yeah.
Okay, they just start running reruns. Yeah. Also, I guess the biggest issue that seems to me, someone looking from the outside in, is this whole issue of artificial intelligence and how these chat bots are going to be used. I've used some of these chat bots to write speeches, to write all kinds of things. And I have to imagine that that's looming large in this conversation with, the negotiations that are happening with the major studios about any kind of commitment, not to just replace you all. Is that a fear that writers have? Is that, one day we may just come to work and a robot?
Well, I think that, like you just said, that you use it to help you write a speech. So the sort of what we're trying to do is, as writers and thinkers, like think ahead. So what could happen is that AI could write a skeleton of a script, and then we then have to come in and then work on that skeleton, Right. But I think that what other people need to realize is that like AI is not just going to really affect us. It's going to affect the actors also. Background work will be completely gone because they're going to just use AI to populate the background. Voiceover work, it's gone. Voiceover work. So this is going to impact so many other things. And so for us as writers, we're trying to get ahead of that, just like we were trying to get ahead of the internet stuff in 2007. We're trying to get ahead of that and say, like, listen, Sure, these things have capabilities and maybe we can figure out how to work it, but we don't want to be beholden to some technology. And we also don't want human beings to be losing their sort of business in the way that many people break into the business because of AI.
Yeah, when we come forward, Kirk, I want to talk about more about AI. I want to talk about what's in the proposal put forth by the writers and the responses from the big networks, because it doesn't seem like you guys are getting close to any kind of resolution. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery. You got to have vision. You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
Tell me of the boys and girls who are young, gifted, and black.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
And that's a fact.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus. KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar. Shot with a rest bar. Shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station.
All right, I'm talking with Kirk Moore. He is a member of the Writers Guild of America. He has credits for American Crime, 13 Reasons, and For Life. And he, amongst 11,499 of his colleagues, are striking, asking for the Motion Picture Association and those big studios to make some concessions. So, Kirk, tell us what's in that settlement proposal that was prepared by the WGA. What are some of the highlights?
So some of the highlights, one is mini rooms. So I'll kind of try to give a little bit of what a mini room is. So traditionally, like you would have a writer's room that would, construct the season and do all the episodes. And typically those rooms traditionally would run about 20 weeks. Now that because there are shorter seasons with, 8-episode seasons, 6-episode seasons, those rooms are getting much smaller. And what's happening is that studios are now, before they actually greenlight a series, they will put together a mini room where it was supposed to just actually help push the season forward. Say, for example, they would a person would sell a script and the studio would say, well, we're not really sure, so we want to read about 2 or 3 more scripts. So they would get a mini room to prepare those 2 or 3 more scripts, and then they would order the season. Now they're just using mini rooms to write the full seasons. And so as opposed to writers working 20 weeks, we're only working sometimes 10 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks. And because the episodes, traditional TV, it was like, 20, 22 episodes. Now it's like 8 to 12. And most writers who are producers, we get paid per episode. Oh. So as the episodes are getting smaller, we're like, well, we need to get paid more per episode because you all are not ordering as many episodes. And they're like, no. So
the rate that you get paid per episode has not changed, but the number of episodes has shrunk. So that 20 is now 8, but it's not like you're getting the same money for the 8 that you got paid for the 20. They're still paying you per episode, except now you multiply that times 8 versus multiplying that by 20. So that's one of the issues, the mini rooms. What's another big issue in your proposal?
And with that, so we get hired on based on minimum. So there's like a minimum that you can pay a writer at a certain level, whether it's a staff writer, a producer, executive producer. And so what we're trying to do is get an increase on those minimums because we're not getting as many episodes. So we asked for a 6.5% increase and they did not agree to that. So, it's stuff like that. Or again, with our residuals, because our streaming residuals are kind of trash. And because we don't know technically like what's popular. We're asking them, like, we want a sort of a stricter numbers-based residual so that we understand how we're getting paid based on how successful our shows are on those streaming platforms. But
give us explain residuals to us, because I think a lot of people hear that term, they're not clear what it means. So help us understand what residuals mean for someone like you that's a writer.
So what happens is that typically we call it a green envelope. You get a green check, and what that means is that once you're hired, if you either wrote your episode or produced your episode, or if you are a producer on the show, you get paid for every episode. So what that means is that, like, after the show airs, based on how many people watched it, whether it was on the internet, whether it was on streaming, whether it's international, we get paid a certain percentage based on all those things, and that happens quarterly. But what happens is that, like, a lot of these streaming shows, like, people are like, we don't know if this show was a hit, or if you told me this show was a hit, but these residuals ain't hitting on nothing. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
but you still get a check quarterly from the streamers, but you're not getting the breakdown of how they arrived at that check that they gave you.
I mean, you're not getting the breakdown, and also the money is just not, like, I've worked on shows on broadcast, I've worked on shows on basic cable, I've worked on shows on streaming. And so, I was on 13 Reasons Why, which was supposedly, when it came out, one of the biggest hits on Netflix, but the residuals are nothing compared to what I got on American Crime, which was a moderate hit, which was a moderate success and mostly a critical hit, and it didn't necessarily have a huge audience. But like because residuals have been in place for broadcast for years, we understand how we're getting paid there. But like, I saw this video today with Snoop was talking, and he was talking about, how rappers and how musicians, they're like, I don't understand this. He was like, when I would release an album, when I came out, if it sold 1 million copies, that album cost $9.99. I know that's $9 million, and I'm gonna get a percentage of that. He's like, but now with streaming, they're saying, oh, they listen to your music for 300 hours. He like, what does that mean? What does that mean in money? And he actually even brought up the writer's strike, and he was like, because he was like, that's what's happening to writers. He was like, they're asking streamers, yo, like, how are you actually dictating how we're getting paid?
So who knows the formula for streamers? Obviously, their internal accounting departments know, because they got to decide, am I sending you $1,000, $10,000, or $5, whatever they're sending you? Somebody internally has figured that out. So who knows that information?
They know it, but the question is, are they going to give us the data? And they don't necessarily want to.
And so you've been asking for this, not just with this strike. I assume this is information, yes. The writers and are the actors facing something very similar? Because actors get residuals as well. Do they get the data?
No, they don't either. And I have a lot of friends who are sort of, are like, they're at the phase where they're sort of like guest star, recurring. They haven't necessarily like gotten that lead yet. And when you hear them talk, they're all talking about how they're getting sort of like what they were paid previous for recurring, they're now getting paid a day rate. So like they're also being affected by this because everybody is being penny pinched. Mm-hmm. So, I think that actors are also feeling it. And if you sort of, there was a movie that was supposed to come out on Netflix. It was going to be a romantic comedy by Nancy Meyers, who did like It's Complicated and all those romantic comedies. And the movie budget was $130 million, and that was just for like a romantic comedy. No, no special effects, no anything. And people were like, "Why is it so expensive?" Well, the reason why is because these people, the writer, the actors, everybody is getting their money up front because they know they're not going to get any money on the back end, and they can't trust the streamers to say, oh, we're going to give you 15% of the back end. We don't know what that is. So
now they're demanding on the front end. So these budgets have gotten fatter
So the
Because
budgets are getting bigger, yes.
right, because the actors, the writers, everybody said, no, give me whatever I'm gonna get right now, because you might be sending me $1 come, 6 years from now, 5
literally,
years.
you might get $1. Like, that's no joke. Like, that is no joke. You
No,
might
I've gotten residual checks. So I know a residual. Okay, you didn't need to write a check to send me this $3.55. But
Exactly.
I feel you on that. I think too, one of the things that people think about is reality TV, right? So we know with the last big writers' strike, what happened was we saw this explosion of reality TV that many of them are not members of the union, so they can produce and go to a marketplace without having to, what some folks would say, pay the fees that you would pay if you had folks in the unions involved in the production of these reality shows. I want to talk about when we come forward, what impact you think this time around reality TV may have. And are a lot of studios just going to trash their scripted shows and look for more opportunities to do reality non-union projects because they can do it without having to deal with either, SAG or the DGA or the WGA. When we come forward, more with Kirk Moore on the writer's strike that's impacting all of Hollywood, right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there.
All right, I'm talking with Kirk Moore. He is a member of the WGA. He has credits such as American Crime, 13 Reasons Why, and For Life. So, Kirk, we're talking about reality TV. We know 15 years ago when the writers went on strike, we saw this explosion of reality TV. What do you think is going to happen this time, particularly if this strike, drags on more than 30, 60, 90 days? Oh, you need to unmute yourself, Kurt.
I have a different view of the sort of reality thing. So when we had the last strike, a few years before that last strike, American Idol premiered, I think in 2004 or 5, which to me, I think actually is what actually began the sort of explosion of reality TV, especially for summer entertainment, because then The Apprentice came after that. There were a ton of, how to, all those things. I think that, yes, the writer's strike showed networks that now we have to put out more of these, but a lot of these shows were already successful. American Idol was 3 years, I think, into their season, and was the biggest show on all of TV, and so everybody was copying. So then come the strike, when they didn't have, and they couldn't do any sort of original programming. So of course they sort of there was an unload in reality TV, because it had proven that it was a hit, especially in that specific time period when they needed sort of summer entertainment before they came back for the fall. Now I will say, now reality TV is sort of, there's game shows, there's judge shows, there's, the housewives, there's a lot of different things. So I don't think that it's going to necessarily change. I feel like reality is reality. It's everywhere now. And I think it's going to stay that way. Do I think that we'll see more? Probably. But I don't think that there just will ever be an appetite for only reality TV, and so that's just where we draw the line. Like, it's like there's only so much of housewives and all of that people are going to be able to take. And, that's why TV has been around for forever, even though reality TV has been around for now, 30 plus, years now. Scripted is still there and it's still big. And there's actually more TV shows now than there were when we had the last strike, So,
oh yeah, for sure. Given all the different networks and streaming sites, and absolutely. So what's going to make these big studios? What's going to bring them to the table to negotiate in good faith? We already talked about the fact that one is at least to say, look, I got a year's worth of content, so we can, just wait this out. We know a lot of billionaires have been made by these big streaming sites, even though they cry broke and say, they've lost subscribers and, advertising dollars are down. That's all we hear about is, how lean the profit margins are. But we know
until they get that bonus at the end of the year.
Well, I was going to say, but we know a lot of these people are making a whole lot of money. A lot of these top executives, they're not missing, a beat in terms of money. But so what brings them to the table?
I really feel, part of it is going to be sort of like guild unity. I do think that if the other guilds get behind us, there's really nothing that they can do. And I ultimately do feel that, like, listen, I think that especially with the AI stuff, with the mini room stuff, with the residuals, like you said earlier in the broadcast, a lot of writers did lose a lot in 2007. And I think that ultimately writers feel, and I can only speak for myself, but in talking to other writers, it's like, well, we kind of have to go broke in order to save what we know is the future of this business. And so we're going to fight it out just as long as they're going to fight it out. I don't know what's going to bring them to the table, but I do think that if the other guilds start to strike, then, I mean, if people ain't coming to work, there's nothing you can do, Mm-hmm. And I do think that that's going to be a large part of it. But I also feel that, once they realize, like, whoa, these writers are not fucking joking, like, we're going to do this for as long as we can, then I think that they're going to realize that at the end of the day, again, even if you have a year's content in the bank, you still need to be developing. So if the writers aren't working, then we aren't developing new shows so you can have stuff when that stuff gets old or when that stuff runs out. So like right now, no one's developing. No one is giving studios stuff for them to have a year and a half from now. So like now they can't do anything. So ultimately, at some point, somebody's going to have to say, wait, this shit is going to run out. Like, we have to come to the table in earnest. And so
somebody's going to blink is what you're saying. That has to happen. Is there a, the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, got involved when LAUSD workers went on strike. It wasn't the teachers, but it was the cafeteria workers, the janitors, the bus drivers. It was those employees that keep schools running. Is there a possibility that someone, some outside person that doesn't really have a horse in the game gets into this and can try to help this strike? Not because, even though you said you're going to wait it out, I imagine a lot of people that don't have savings, don't have resources, and are going to be really, really financially impacted in a significant way.
Yes. I mean, one of the misconceptions that people think that writers are rich. Like, yes, there are writers. There are writers who are doing really, really well and who have $300 million overall deals, 100 like that. Yes, there are those, but most writers are like working class people, and we're like contract workers. We work 20 weeks on a show, and then we have to find another show to go in the meantime to make sure that we can have employment for the rest of the year. So we're going from, job to job. And so we just want to make sure that that is as secure as it can possibly be.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're right. People think everybody that works in Hollywood is rich, right? It doesn't matter what you do. If you're an extra, standing behind someone, if you're on a show and you get one line. I remember traveling with a friend of mine, and she sat next to a producer who does reality TV. And we got off the plane. I was in the front of the plane. She was in the back. And she said, "Oh my God, I sat next to this producer. I couldn't believe." She was stunned when the producer told her what these reality stars got paid. She thought that these folks were balling. And I think, I don't know, the woman told her, maybe per show they were getting $5,000, $7,000 or something. Not to say that's nothing. I don't want to minimize that as the amount of money that some people make. But she thought, that had to be in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. She was so shocked to hear. So give us order of magnitude. What does a typical writer in the WGA make on a 20-episode show?
Well, I can't remember so staff writers, I think like a staff writer, that's your first job. I think the minimum is like $5,000 or $6,000. Actually, it's maybe it's like a week or something like that, or like $4,000 a week. But what you have to realize is that most of us have agents, we have managers, we have lawyers, some of us have accountants. So off top, we're coming off 25 to 30% off of whatever that check is. And then we have to pay taxes on that, on top of that. So then that's another, 30% off. So that, whatever that's 6,000 or 4,000.
Let's go with that. Well, like you said it's $4,000 or $5,000 a week for a staff writer times 20. Let's give them $80,000 to $100,000. And as you said, 30% of that off the top to agents, managers, lawyers, accountants. So that 100,000 is 70,000. And now I guess if you pick up, there's 52 weeks in a year. So maybe if you work all of those weeks, which doesn't seem to be likely, right? The average person's probably not working every week. But even if you did, you're talking about taking home anywhere from $140,000 to $150,000 a year after you pay, all those folks off the top. So obviously writers aren't poor. That's considered, I'd say, a good high middle class job in America. People making over $100,000 a year. But I think the more relevant point is look at what those CEOs and the C-suites in those studios make. So when people look at what the writers make, look at what the heads of some of these streaming sites, they're multi-millionaires, if not billionaires. Many of them are billionaires. And I think that's what's so fundamentally unfair. You all are out there making these shows super, super successful, and you just want to share in the
profits.
The profits, yeah. That's just plain and simple. And we know in this country, workers often bear the brunt. We have a problem in this country. We make a few people at the top extra, extra rich. And the people that do all the heavy lifting oftentimes can, particularly in a city like LA and cities like New York, barely survive. And that's also something to keep in mind. So my heart goes out. I'm a SAG member myself, so I hope that SAG does stand in solidarity with the WGA. I hope the DGA stands in solidarity. This is an issue, like you said, not just impacting writers, anyone that's working in this business has a horse in this race and needs to be concerned about this. And the economy of cities that are going to suffer, because eventually some of those productions that have not already stopped, others will start to be shut down, and it will have a ripple effect on economies throughout this country. Thank you so much, Kirk, for sitting down with me and sharing your story and helping us better understand what's happening. Like I said, we're going to be watching this very closely and standing in solidarity with you, and wish you the best of luck. Hope this strike ends pretty quickly. Absolutely. All right, y'all, this is it from me. You can continue to follow me on all social media platforms at Areva Martin. And the next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers and the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580.